Alayne. Sir Roland, she whispered into the crisp morning air. Sir Andrew, Sir Michael, Sir John, the Knight of 9 Stars and Sir Marwyn, Sir Harlan, Harry the heir. The names were like a prayer from her childhood. If the gods are just, they will deliver me my knights. Alayne was seated just outside the Lord's box, her chair high-backed and ornate. It was no place for a bastard girl, she knew. Even the highborn mostly sat on simple benches, but her father had had his way again over her own blushing protests. Her presence soothes Lord Robert, he'd told Nestor Royce, and the last thing they wanted was for the true Warden of the East to have a spell in front of all the lords and ladies of the Vale. On the other side of the rail sat Lord Peter and Lord Nestor, with Miranda Royce at her father's right hand. Between the Lord Protector and the Keeper of the Gates sat the Defender of the Vale himself, a drop of snot dangling from the tip of his nose. The little lord rested atop an elevated throne upholstered in fine sable, its great cushion raising him just above the height of his companions. Alayne could see his shining eyes grow large as the first match neared, and she smiled at his innocent fascination with the attendant ceremonies. Sweetrobin was wrapped in furs from head to toe, his white cloak of bearskin over them all, and beneath them all, a bellyful of sweet milk to calm his nerves. Still, from time to time, she saw him twitch and shiver. The cool mountain air, Alayne told herself, wishing the servants had given him another lair. Morning rays showered the lists, gleaming off the frost-covered soil. As the first 4 challengers trotted before the Lord's box, a herald yelled out the knights' names in turn. They saluted Lord Robert with a lowering of their lances, before 2 circled to the north end of the tilting lanes, and 2 headed south. Sir Garibald Hersey, a winged chalice upon his shield, faced the wheel of Sir Roland Wainwood, whilst the Knight of the Broken Lance, Sir Gillian Windman, was opposite Sir Luke Grafton with his burning tower. The knights dropped their visors, took their places, coached their lances. A hush fell over the crowd as all awaited the great lord's signal. The Lord of the Eyrie waved with a child's gleeful vigor, and a trumpet lent him its voice to announce the match was underway. The crowd buzzed with excitement as spur met horse, hoof pounded frozen earth. The charge was a blur, but time seemed to slow in the instant before contact. Crack! A crash of wood rang out and the crowd erupted into thunderous cheers. Sir Roland had unhorsed Sir Hersey, errant splinters raining down upon both men. The lance of Sir Gillian had not shattered, despite his sigil, but its strike had knocked Sir Luke to the earth. Peter gave Alayne a smile and a wink. Her father had gone over the lists with her that morning in his solar, as they broke their fast on porridge and baked apple slices, smothered in cinnamon. 64 competitors had come to the Gates of the Moon to vie for the protectorship of Lord Robert Arryn. The rules were simple as tourneys go. The first to break 3 lances or to unhorse his opponent would advance. Today the knights would dwindle to 2 and 30. Tomorrow, 6 and 10. On the final day, her little lord would bestow silver wing helms on his 8 victors, and her father would claim just as many hostages. The competitors believed the matches were determined by lot, drawn by the most godly of men at the Gates of the Moon. After a miracle was worked in the Sept's coffers, however, Sept and Vain indulged the Lord Protector with new and holier pairings. Here, Peter said, taking Alayne's hand and moving it to a group of names on the page. His hand was sticky with apple. Who is the likely victor? Alayne considered the names, all strong competitors. Sir Samwell Stone is daunting, but Sir Marwyn Belmore is the most seasoned. He will be difficult to defeat. Littlefinger smiled and nodded in agreement. Strong Sam is here to spy for Bronze Jan, not to win. Meanwhile, Sir Ding Dong is hungry for honor. I shamed him when I made Brune Robert's captain of guard in his place. Alayne was confused. Sir Marwyn already resides here at the gates. What advantage does he offer us as a winged knight? None. And I have bought Lord Benedar besides, but collecting the better knights on one side of the competition leaves green boys and fishmongers on the other. Below, what do you see? She examined the next group on the parchment. They were all weak, save one. Sir Michael Redfort will surely win. She saw no better knight with the quintains. And his brother John has an easy path to victory as well. Peter slid Alayne's hand to another set of names. Where 2 Redforts go, the rest will likely follow. It'd be a certainty if Lord Horton would have the grace to die already. These men, Alayne said, pointing to the next group, Sir Ben Coldwater, Sir Andrew Tillett, and Sir Damon Shett, are all of similar skill from what I've seen, and each is of similar worth to me. Bronzion sent no son to tilt, as he has none to spare, so I must settle for a bannerman of his. Most like Sir Andrew shall prevail amongst his peers, I think. As Alayne moved down the parchment, her eyes widened. There's a mystery knight! The Orphan of God's Grace? Peter sighed. Yes, Donal Wainwood insisted the Dornishman ride in his stead to add thrill to the tourney, and did so within the hearing of Lord Robert no less. I could hardly refuse. Fear not, sweet daughter. You've heard more songs of the Dragon Knight than you've seen tourneys, haven't you? But I've seen 100 tourneys, and I'll tell you a secret. In life, the Mystery Knight's rarely a prince in disguise. More often, he's there to excite some wagers with a strong first tilt, only to run into some bad luck in his second. Littlefinger arched an eyebrow. The misfortune he'll run into tomorrow is Lothar Brune, so his loss will look utterly convincing, I think. Then Sir Lothar will fall to Sir Rowland Wainwood, I see. Your eyes are as sharp as they are lovely, said Peter, dusting cinnamon off Alayne's sleeve. With her grandson a winged knight, Lady Anya should no longer trouble us, nor should Roland's father. Alayne read further. Do you think Simon Templeton will triumph over Alistair Upcliffe? I'm surprised Sir Simon, a lord, should seek wings. The service to little Robert is but 3 years, most like far less, and the Knight of 9 Stars is eager for some glory, any glory, to be attached to his name. His forebears were all the greatest of knights, dying in this battle or that, what the greatest of knights are wont to do. Meanwhile, the page of Sir Simon's life is blank, so we will give him a quill. Her eyes scanned down the page. 2 hunters look to break lances, she observed. Do we want one above the other? This time Peter's smile reached his eyes. Harlan is here with the promise of meeting his older brother in the lists. He is a better rider than Eustace, and accidents are a fact of tourneys. I expect our Eric and Eric shall meet on the 3rd day, and if one potential heir should fall, the other's value as a hostage rises. He dismissed the brothers with a shrug. Now tell me about your herald's chances. Alayne examined the 7 names the heir could face. Harry is strong, but up-jumped. Today he will tilt against Wallace Wainwood, a boy just as green, but smaller and more timid. Harry will prevail. Her father nodded. What next? On the morrow he will face Sir Byron or Sir Shadrick. Both men are in your service and will do as you bid. Harry will not lose. And on the 3rd day. She studied the remaining names. One made her shudder. In his final tilt, Harry will face Sir Lyn Corbray, a formidable knight, a peerless jouster, and my staunchest enemy. But secretly your friend, said Alayne, uncertain. Lyn Corbray is nobody's friend, Littlefinger laughed. Just the same, he will fall on the 3rd day and find his debts paid on the 4th. Alayne looked over the page again, admiring Lord Peter's handiwork. There were 64 names from houses all over the Vale. Hersey and Sunderland, Lips and Upcliffe, Egan and Linderley, Waxley and Pryor. Yet her Lord Father had so arranged them to gain power over 5 Lords Declarant and the heir to the Eyrie. Bronzion would stand alone. With a quill, Peter circled the choices. The Brotherhood of Winged Knights, the greatest of swords, the noblest of men. Sir Rowland Wainwood, Sir Marwyn Belmore, Sir Harlan Hunter, the brothers Redfort, the Knight of 9 Stars, Sir Andrew Tillett, Lord Harold Harding. Has there ever been such a roll of heroes? Peter's thin lips smiled as his hand brushed Alayne's cheek. My gift to you. Know their names, sweetling. The saviors of Winterfell. Alayne did know them. She felt her tummy tie itself in knots when the herald called them out. To her relief, most of her knights rode true. With just one charge, Sir Michael unhorsed a knight from House Pryor, smashing the knight's bright shield of moon-eclipsing sun. It took Sir Andrew 4 tilts, but he did likewise to Schuyler Stone, a hedge knight without device. Sir Everett Moore signalled the Knight of 9 Stars for a mercy pass, but Sir Simon struck him down regardless. Harlan and Eustace each won his tilt, drawing closer to a meeting of the brothers on the third day, though it was a near thing for the elder hunter. He and Lewis of Crab Cove broke 3 lances apiece, leaving Lord Robert to declare a winner. Her little lord said that the knight with the arrows rode steadier, but Alayne suspected he won because his shield lacked a scary crab. Marwyn Belmore disappointed her, however, breaking only 1 lance to Lord Nestor's son Albar. Randa squealed with glee at her brother's victory, while her father nodded with quiet pride. Alayne was careful to cheer, just as she'd done for the rest. In the afternoon, 4 riders came before the Lord's box for the next matches. "Sir Alistair of House Upcliff, a knight of Witch Isle," the herald announced. "Sir Xander, called the Hungry, in service of House Templeton. Sir Gareth of House Sunderland, son of Lord Tristan Sunderland. Sir John of House Redfort, son of Lord Horton Redfort." Alayne sat up straight at the sound of John's name. The knights dipped their lances in salute, but before they made for their places, Maester Coleman entered the box bearing a large covered cage. He shuffled towards the Lord Protector, but Littlefinger was already out of his seat and signaling the herald. The man nodded, then sounded his trumpet long and long again. "Lords and ladies," the herald boomed into the hushed crowd, "a splendid omen has graced this tourney, for it ushers in the first day of winter." As Coleman held the cage aloft, Peter swept away the sheet to reveal the surprise beneath. Looking at the color of its feathers, Alayne remembered words from her childhood. A happy shriek called her back to Sweetrobin. The lordling was beside himself in delight at the enormous bird. Polite applause at the season's changing was all the crowd could muster. Sir Gareth bowed his head. "My lord, the beast is white like the moon of your sigil, and it looks more falcon than raven. This is a sign. The gods have blessed your tourney." The raven hopped around its cage in some dismay at all the noise, letting out a caw to rival the herald's cry. Then it turned towards the knights and screamed, "John!" After a pause, broke out a smattering of uncertain laughter. John Redfort lifted his visor to grin at Gareth. "It speaks my name. What better omen than that? The wings are for me this season. That must mean you'll be flopping back into the sea." The raven cocked its head and squawked, "Beware!" This time the crowd stayed quiet. "Beware!" it screamed a second time. "John, beware!" John's face turned pale as the raven. It was on the 3rd charge that Sir John erred, keeping his shield too low to stop the sisterman's lance. The tip found the center of his breastplate, and he flew from the saddle to the dirt. "My father will not be happy about that," thought Alayne. "But all that truly matters is my betrothed, my Harry. He need win but this one tilt." Earlier in the day, Sir Byron the Beautiful had gracefully broken 3 lances on the shield of Sir Shadrach, scraping off his mouse's head in the process. Sir Byron will let Harry through the 2nd round, Sir Lynn the 3rd. 1 tilt and he'll stay. We'll be married. The veil will rise against the Boltons. I can go home. Sir Harold Harding entered the lists on his destrier, a beast as white as the snow atop the giant's lance. Barded in the red and white diamonds of House Harding, his horse trotted towards the Lord's box at a leisurely pace as the crowd roared Harry's name. They love him well. He knows it too. And there were the Moon and Falcon quarterlings upon his shield, presenting his claim for all to see. Robert Arryn saw. Alayne wondered what face Harry would make if he could hear Sweetrobin's feeble jeers. Before the Lord's box, the herald bellowed the names of the competitors. The 4 knights saluted by dipping their lances, though Harold's effort was little more than a twitch. Harry glanced at Alayne and grinned, but Alayne kept her face still. "I order you to make him fly, Sir Wallace," Robert suddenly blurted out. Wallace bowed his head. "I will make him soar from his saddle, my lord." Harry scowled, closed his visor, and cantered off. Butterflies fluttered in Alayne's stomach. No, not butterflies. Bats. She looked to her father, but he only smirked, his eyes locked on Harry. Alayne said a prayer, the trumpet sounded, and the knights rode. Crack! There was an explosion of lances, though not Harry's or Wallace's. Sir Morgarth the Merry and Sir Gregor Egan had struck each other's shields, but the knights Alayne watched had missed each other and now reared their horses around for another pass. Their 2nd charge was as fruitless as the first. "Oh dear," Lord Nestor groaned. It took 9 passes for Harry to break 2 lances. Wallace won. The boys were then given warning to present their shields properly, though the knight's aim did not soon improve on the 10th or 11th go. On the 12th charge, the Waynwood knight leaned too far towards the tilting barrier, lost his balance, and fell from his mount. It was decided that Sir Harold had unhorsed him. Though the tilt was an embarrassment for Harry, Alayne was awash in relief. Her solace was short-lived. Sir Lyn Corbray was next to enter the lists through the shield-covered gate. When the knight tilted against Sir Ossifer, lance met lips with such force that Ossifer's charger went down with him. The horse got back up, but Sir Ossifer had been carried from the field with a broken ankle. Alayne shuddered thinking of the poor Sunderland boy who had faced Sir Lyn on the morrow. The sisterman was handsome, and a fine dancer, Randus smirks aside. Her father said the knights from houses Sunderland, Pryor, and Elisham had been invited for their skill at jousting, or more precisely, for their lack of skill. The islands of the Bight were as poor and bleak as the Fingers, Peter told her, filled with fish, fishermen, and the smell of fish. In truth, they are more squishers than men, he'd added with a laugh, though Alayne had never heard of a squisher. "My Lady Alayne," the Sunderland knight had called to her as she'd strolled past his green and blue pavilion only a few hours before. "I bid you good morning." "You bid me?" "I know you not, yet you would have me do your bidding." "I only meant—" the boy started before catching Alayne's playful look. "My apologies. You granted me a dance, and I had not even the courtesy to give you my name. I am Sir Damon." "Damon?" asked Alayne. "Like the rogue prince?" In the stories, Daemon Targaryen was ruthless. Ruthless and gallant. "I'm not such a rogue as that one." The boy was no older than 8 and 10, with brown hair and brown eyes. One of his teeth was a bit crooked, but Alayne found him dashing all the same. "Lord Robert summoned us to defend him. I see no greater honor than in doing so, if I should prove worthy." "Then well met, Sir Damon, the honorable," she said with a mock curtsy. "I pray the warrior shall guide your lance. If you will excuse me, I must find my father before the tilts commence." "Of course, my lady." The knight bowed his head. Alayne took 4 steps, then shot a sly look over her shoulder. "Unless there is some favor you would beg of me." The green ribbon from Alayne's hair was wrapped around Damon's arm as he broke 3 lances against Sir Leon Elisham. It was a grand performance. Was that my doing? A lady's favor was known to hearten men in the joust, giving them the courage and confidence to prevail. But the victory had put him in Lyn Corbray's way. Does Sir Lyn know what mercy is? For the day's final tilt, the Orphan of God's Grace arrived in a motley of mismatched armor. His breastplate was old and rusty, showing a Waynwood wheel painted over in haste with red and black between its spokes. In the center of the new sigil was a golden hand, repeated on its shield, drawn with skill equal to that of the Lord of the Eyrie. As a crest, a lobstered gauntlet had been affixed atop his helm. The man looked more a fool than Florian, but the snickering ceased when the orphan sent Sir Hector Harding to the earth. Victorious, the mystery knight galloped off the field and back to his tent without even interrupting his charge. "What Dornishman would even come to the Vale?" asked Sir Byron that night in the great hall. "They think snowflakes are tiny white demons that steal their young. It's why they keep south of Blackhaven." "Word is some Ironwood knights went missing a few months back," said Andrew Tillett. "Lord Ander's own son Cletus, along with his nephew and some others. The Blood Royal won't say where they went. The orphan must be one of those." "Couldn't he be Oberyn Martell's squire?" asked strong Sam Stone. "I think he was from God's Grace. Or maybe it was the Hellholt." "I say he's the ghost of Aaron Santigar," put in Ben Coldwater. "He has returned from the dead for one last tourney. He hides a crushed skull beneath that helm, I bet." "Is it time for wagers, then? 50 dragons on the orphan to win his next tilt," yelled Lord Belmore. "Deal," called back Littlefinger. Alayne had no seat of honor at this meal. The places around the dais had been reserved for the victorious. Sir Roland, Alayne saw. Sir Andrew, the Knight of 9 Stars, and Sir Harlan. Sir Michael. Harry the Heir. Only 6 of her 8, but it made no matter. Sir Marwyn was at the gates already, and John Redfort's brother would be hostage enough. Had it all gone perfectly, it would have been too obvious in truth. Amongst 32 winners' chairs, one sat empty. The mystery knight who sparked so much conjecture was still in his tent, though the squires of Donal Wainwood and Hector Harding had taken him a tray of food. As she ate, Alayne was subject to several passionate explanations of jousting and its strategy. The game took not only strength and speed and balance, old Oswald told her, but also planning, cunning, and deception. "It is Sivas on Destrier," he said, speaking of the game he brought up with him from Gulltown. Sir Targon the Half-Wild, reaching generously for a more feminine comparison, told her tilts were no less than song with lance. "I won, didn't I? The boy's stupid plume met dirt all the same," Sir Gareth Sunderland said in dismissal of Lyman Linderley's criticism. The two would not meet in the lists and made frank talk. "His helm is not your concern," scolded Sir Lyman. "It was there to distract you, and that it did. Look to his shield and only his shield. Before your horse rides your lance, before your lance rides your gaze." After dinner, Alayne met Sweetrobin in his tower for the game of rats and cats she'd promised him. She bid her little lord count 7 sevens, then rushed down the corridor to his chambers. After pushing aside a stack of doublets, she found room to curl up inside his wardrobe, shutting the doors behind her. A minute later, the hinge of the chamber door groaned. She held her breath, waiting for his giggles. "We can speak here," she heard instead. "I must wait to give the boy his sleeping draught." "Which potion is it?" asked a second voice, more high and shrill than the first. Alayne did not move. As still as stone, she thought, recalling her surname. She glimpsed a grey robe from between the wardrobe's doors. "Mummer's wine," replied the first man. He sounded familiar. "The Lord Protector wants me dosing him day and night. His bastard commands me too. If I heeded them, the boy would be dead 5 times over." The second man let out a cackle. "Ebro says that a man's belief can cure half of what ails him." His footsteps grew louder, and suddenly the wardrobe shifted and creaked as he leaned against it. "What of the White Raven? What does the conclave say?" "1 loose in the east, 2 chained by the King of Marine." She could place the first voice now. It was Maester Coleman. "Daenerys herself is missing." The second man breathed a sigh of relief. "This is good news, is it not?" Coleman grunted. "They live. This Myronese king could make a new rider, or fail and let another loose. The stray could be claimed by the slave cities, or Aegon, or the Ironborn for all we know." "They don't have the blood." "We thought Daenerys didn't either. You have a copper link. You know the tale of Nettles." "Has anyone gotten a raven from Kedri?" "We are blind when it comes to the Dornish," said Coleman. "Though in Old Town they say Marwyn." The hinge of the chamber door creaked again, and a boy asked, "What are you doing in my chambers? I have to find Alayne." "The lady is not here," said Coleman. "My lord, would you like honeyed milk before bed?" The sound of footsteps faded. Alayne waited till she heard nothing, then a long while after that. The next morning, Alayne could not find her father, so she broke fast with Sweetrobin. They ate bacon, melon, and eggs boiled soft, as they had every day since coming to the gates. It was a meal he had oft taken with Lady Lysa, it seemed. Alayne looked at the boy and thought of Maester Coleman's words. Mummer's wine, the White Raven's message, blood. She could not find sense in them. Alayne put her hand on the boy's head, caressing his hair. "Sweetrobin, do you know the tale of Nettles?" she asked. "Or of Daenerys?" The name seemed familiar, but she had forgotten the details. "Nettles was a beautiful bastard girl, like you, Alayne," said Robert through a mouth stuffed with egg. "And she could fly. She came to the Vale on dragonback and ruled as queen over the burned men. Daenerys was a Dornish princess." Bits of egg sprayed from his mouth to land upon the table. Alayne remembered the stories now, but they did not solve the puzzle for her. An Aegon? A Dornish princess? A warning for Sir John. How did they all fit? They were related to Sir Marwyn Bellamore, and Old Town, and the Dornish Mystery Knight, she knew. But how? Half as many competitors would compete on the second day of tilts, but only a single lane was to be used henceforth instead of 2, so the day would be just as long. Alayne arrived at her seat as the trumpets called the first jousters to the field. "Father," Alayne said, We should speak. She did not know how to explain what she had heard while crammed in the wardrobe. It's about Sir Marwyn, and Sir John, and the Dornishman. I believe you need not trouble yourself, my sweet, Peter assured her. Our plans are all intact, but remember, there are spies about. He raised a finger to his lips and smiled. At first, all the pieces seemed to move as they'd planned. Sir Michael broke 3 lances against his opponent, as did Sir Eustace. Both would advance to the final day. Sir Roland was the victor against Sir Morgarth, who all but leapt from his horse at the touch of the Waynwood knight's lance. My father's man, Alayne smiled to herself. 1 piece given to take a stronger one. It was Cyvasse on Destrier after all. The position changed with the arrival of Maya Stone. Today the mule girl was not dressed in leathers, but in a black woolen dress with a sable trim and a matching shawl collar. Despite the cold, the bodice was cut deep to reveal the top of the bastard girl's breasts. Her short black hair was combed and styled in a fashionable tumble. Her cheeks were pink, her lips red. The girl made Alayne feel homely by comparison, though her eyes were sullen and unsure. Maya! Randa greeted, rising. We thank you for joining us. As Lord Peter's daughter has been given such a favorable seat, I thought it only fitting that the daughter of a king receive the same. Miranda reached over the railing of the Lord's box to squeeze the soft, clean hands of the mule girl. Maya only nodded, then took a seat on a high-backed chair beside Alayne's. Sir Lothar of House Brune, called the Apple Eater, in service of House Arryn, the herald was announcing. When the applause finally quieted, he yelled, The Orphan of God's Grace! And it returned louder still. The men saluted Robert with their lances, but Sir Lothar's gaze never left Maya Stone. The orphan was halfway to the south end of the field when Brune realized he was alone before the Lord's box. He snapped his visor shut and cantered south after his opponent, then realized his mistake, turned hastily about, and galloped back north. Littlefinger made a jape of it to Nestor Royce, but Alayne saw him rub his temples. The rest went as her father must have feared. The trumpet was sounded and the horses spurred, but Sir Lothar's horse set off a moment late. The orphan struck the center of Brune's shield, while Sir Lothar only grazed the orphan's shoulder. They wheeled around and took up new lances for the second pass, but Alayne was already thinking of the morrow. It will be the orphan who will face Sir Roland. As Lothar Brune lay on the ground, the orphan dropped what was left of his lance and galloped once more through the sea of pavilions to his lonely tent. Off goes the hermit of God's grace, remarked Lord Nestor. And your bag of dragons, eh? Her father forced a laugh. I wish Lord Belmore joy of them until our next wager. Only Alayne saw how tight his knuckles clenched as he gripped the rail between them. If her father's scheme had sprung a leak, the rest of the day saw it half sunk. Sir Edmund Waxley broke 3 lances to Sir Simon's 2. The Knight of 9 Stars would not find glory amongst the winged knights, nor would Andrew Tillett, nor Harlan Hunter. In the space of an afternoon, her 6 had dwindled to 3. The only welcome result of the afternoon was Harry's victory over Sir Byron the Beautiful, though that outcome had been certain from the start. The hedge knight's skill in the joust exceeded even his comeliness. During each charge, he deftly dropped his lance to miss both knight and shield, whilst guiding his own shield directly to Harry's tip. In just 5 passes, he made Harry look almost accomplished. When the knight who wore her favour trotted before the Lord's box, bats flapped restlessly in Alayne's stomach. She smiled for him, then said a silent prayer to the mother. Sir Lynn of House Corbray, heir to Hart's home, boomed the herald. Sir Damon of House Sunderland, son of Lord Tristan Sunderland. The sistermen have such drab helms, Randa remarked, glancing sidelong at Alayne. She had recognized the ribbon then. He could use a plume. Mayhaps a piece of kelp? Nestor Royce laughed. Soon his helm will have ornament enough, I think. The tip of Sir Lynn's lance. How many sistermen does it take to saddle a mount? Sweetrobin joined in. 9, 8 to fetch the saddle, and 1 to haul up the fish. Lord Nestor and Miranda laughed with him politely, though the fool Benjagot had told the same jape the night before in the great hall. Alayne forced to smile as well. At the signal, the knight's steeds sped forward. When lances struck, Sir Lynn's burst into 1,000 shards, while Damon's slid off its target still intact. The knights turned their horses about, Lynn was past a new lance, they charged again. This time both lances broke with an echoing crack. "One more break and Sir Lyn advances," Alayne prayed. "Daemon will make it through the day intact." As the third charge commenced, however, Lyn Corbray's saddle shifted beneath him and his body slid sideways towards the tilt barrier. He dropped his shield and leaned forward, grasping for his mount's crenette. Daemon's lance caught him in the shoulder and drove him into the mud. A cacophony of gasps, groans, and applause rippled through the crowd. Peter was grinning through gritted teeth, mindful even now of his feigned enmity with the knight. Sir Lyn was not so restrained. Once he found his feet, he stormed back to the groom charged with saddling his horse, and struck him briskly with his gauntlet. The boy's nose spurted blood as he fell to the ground. It was near dusk when the second day of tilting concluded, and another dinner was held to honor the triumphant 6 and 10. Sir Michael, Alayne whispered. Sir Roland. Harry the heir. A terse prayer now, and what remained was yet uncertain. On the morrow, Michael would ride against one of the elder Sunderlands. Roland would tilt with the fierce orphan, and Harry would face a real opponent. Alayne was not surprised when her father wasn't seen at the meal. He is working to salvage what he can of this. She did not know why Lord Nestor and Maester Coleman were not there either, though. Before the first course was served, Hunter's Maester whispered in the ear of Lord Gilwood, who spoke to Lord Simond, who talked with Lady Anya in turn. Once Lady Anya conferred with Miranda Royce, it was a matter of time, and not much of it, before everyone in the great hall heard the news. 2 ravens, black as their tidings, had reached the gates of the moon. The news from King's Landing was tragic. Kevin Lannister, the Hand of the King, had been murdered, as had the Grand Maester. Lord Mace Tyrell, the Queen's father, was now acting as Tommen's hand. "I can understand the hand, but why kill the old Maester?" Sir Karl of the Lake asked Everett Moore. "I bet the old man knew the truth," said Sir Everett. "Just look at those tapestries and the bastard mule girl. It's plain as day." As alarming as the news from the Red Keep had been, it was the second raven, the one from Harrenhal, that stirred more chatter and commotion. Sir Bonifer Hasty, the castellan of her father's seat, had rebelled against the crown, naming himself Lord of Harrenhal, and declaring himself for a King Aegon Targaryen, whose sellsword army suddenly controlled most of the Stormlands. The news was dizzying to Alayne. Aegon, she thought. But what of Sir John and the Dornish princess? She wondered whether this invasion would spoil what remained of her own plans, ruin her betrothal, prevent a march on Winterfell. She decided to play spymaster that night in her father's absence. As the wine was brought out, she made pleasant chatter with the servant girls, then passed them copper stars for what they could overhear. "If he's not Lord of Harrenhal, to what does he owe his title?" Lord Grafton was heard to ask of Simon Templeton. "He will never surrender his title of Lord Protector," Lord Gilwood Hunter had worried. "He has no seat to return to." Won't the crown take the castle back?" Wallace Wainwood had wondered of Mads Melcombe. "With what men?" Sir Mads had replied. "They must needs first check the Golden Company's advance. Their northern allies are repelling Stannis. Their fleet is dealing with the Ironmen. There's no one to lay a winter siege." "It will fall to Riverrun to retake Harrenhal," Donald Wainwood declared to a table of knights within Alayne's own hearing. "Emmon Frey will take the castle and any other lands he wants, and he will never give them back. Then he will sue for peace with whichever king prevails." "Brune, the tract the crown promised you, it's in the Riverlands Eye?" asked Alistair Upcliffe, arching an eyebrow. Sir Lothar nodded to his reflection in the ale. "Welcome back to the company of landless knights." Gregor Egan raised his own cup in a toast. Sir Donald was not finished. "Once Emmon has taken Littlefinger's seat, he is certain to move on Derry," he told them. "Is Derry not held by a Lady Frey already?" asked Lyman Linderley. "Merritt Frey's wife, or perhaps his daughter. They're of the same house." "Emmon Frey has no love for his half-brothers or their children either," said Donald impatiently. "And Merritt's daughter is a lonely widow of 10 and 8. Her kin march north to worship trees. When spring comes, they will be lords or corpses. In either case, they will not come to her aid." "That's for the rivermen to sort out," said Sir Gillian. "Are those the words of your house?" Sir Donald gave a mocking laugh. "Look at this lot of hedge knights and second sons. You all have a place to lay your head tonight, but will you on the morrow? In a year, in 10. Will you find lords with open hands when you can no longer swing a sword or lift a lance? We laugh at crippled Ossifer today, but that is the fate of each and every one of us. The knights around him shifted in their seats uncomfortably, save Sir Hector, who smirked and poured himself another drink. The maester who came with House Hunter was listening, but Sir Donald paid him and Alayne no mind. In the Riverlands, the Freys are going to war. It's not just Emond Frey. At the Twins, the heir feuds with his brother. And when brother kills brother, the ones left standing are the sisters. Donald's smile was savage, baring his teeth. The unwed daughters, the widows, the orphaned maids. They will all need husbands to sire them whelps, and they will choose from the men who come to defend their lands. If the crown will not send those men, who will? Alayne's ears wanted to hear more of the knight's chatter. Her bladder had a different desire. I should not have had the second glass of wine. She was forced to excuse herself to find the privy. The gods were good, and Matty was near to help her with her dress. When she was finished, she found Sir Harold waiting for her in the corridor, a grin on his face. Lady Alayne, I am sorry to have spurned your offer. Will you show me to my chambers after all? Ignoring the servant, he took Alayne by the hand and walked. But he did not lead her to the Falcon Tower. Instead, they found a room that sat unused, a room to be alone in. Once he had shut the door, Harry's eyes met Alayne's. He put a hand under Alayne's chin, tilting her face upward. Then he pressed his lips to hers. Her heart beat wildly, though not so wildly as the wings of the bat she must have swallowed. She reached up and wrapped her arms around his neck. It reminded her of her first kiss, a dim memory. Then his tongue was in her mouth and his hands on her back, pulling her in. This is what it is to be kissed, Alayne thought. Truly kissed. The knight slid his right hand from Alayne's back to her hip, then up her rib until he was cupping her breast. She pulled her head back with an uncomfortable laugh. My lord, we should return to the feast. Harry chortled, eyes glimmering with confidence. Should we, my lady? You said you wanted to know how I joust. He took her hand and placed it against himself. Today I showed Sir Byron. It would be unfair not to show you. Alayne's eyes opened wide. Sir, I am a maid. We must wait till we are wed. She pulled her hand free and turned to leave. With one long stride, he caught her and grabbed her above the elbow. Well, you've made me chase you. Suddenly she was on the ground, breathless, and he was climbing onto her. Have you played long enough at innocence, bastard girl? Or should I tear your clothes for you as well? Stop! Please stop! She shouted as he rubbed his body against hers. He clasped one hand over her mouth to quiet her. The other began to unlace his breeches. Hush, girl, he said. We will only seal our betrothal. Now let me see this pointy beard of yours. He finished with his laces and reached between her legs. No! Alayne let out a muffled scream. Leave her be, cousin. Harry froze at the command. There in the door stood Sweetrobin, Sir Lothar behind him. Else I'll make you fly, he added, as menacing as the boy of 8 could make himself. I am Lord of the Eyrie, and I demand Alayne come with me and read me a story. His eyes on Brune, Harry swore, rose, tucked his manhood into his breeches. When she found her own feet, Alayne ran past the boy in the door and kept on running. She locked the door to her chamber, sat with her back against the door, and closed her eyes. Sometime later, when her breathing had slowed, Alayne thought about what to do. Should she tell Peter? Lothar has told him by now. What about Anya Wainwood? Perhaps Harry would break their betrothal. But I will see the Winged Knights every day. What was to become of her plan, her future? Harry the arse. Brune's words. Peter's man had saved her again. Harry was more than an arse, though. He was a monster. My father could not have foreseen this. Could he? Sansa wept and thought of Winterfell. Alayne decided it had never happened. The next morning, she woke from restless sleep. Her shoulders ached, her eyes were dry. She had no appetite, so she did not rise for breakfast. Instead, she lay just as she was, exhausted. When her eyes opened again, she thought of Sweetrobin. Her presence soothes Lord Robert. Reluctantly, she bestirred herself. She found her little lord in the lord's box beside Nestor and Miranda Royce, all looking cheerful. Peter Baelish was oddly absent. "Where is my lord father?" asked Alayne. "Lord father?" asked Randa. "Can we really call him that anymore? He still has domain over those rocks and sheep in the fingers, I suppose. Though it's queer, with all the chaos in the realm, the only talk this morning was of the debauchery last night." Elaine's eyes widened. "Does she know? What tale did Harry tell?" "You did not hear? Michael Redfort was caught abed with Maya Stone. Lady Redfort will not be too pleased about that. Nor Bronze Jan either." Alayne stared. "Michael and Maya?" she said slowly. "Do you think this will affect his tilt today?" "I pray you did not make a wager," Randa laughed. "My girl, the tilt is done. Sir Aubrey Sunderland's rod cast Michael far from the skiff." Numbly, Alayne looked to where the sun hung in the sky. It was past noon. She had overslept by hours. Miranda and Sweetrobin told her of what else she had missed. Sir Aubrey's brother Gareth had also won his tilt, as had Lyman Linderley and Alistair Upcliffe. Ben Coldwater had fallen to the hedge knight Targon the Half-Wild. Harlan Hunter's brother Eustace had earned a place among the Lord's protectors, though Alayne thought he could use protectors of his own. "What of Sir Roland Wainwood?" she asked. Here Lord Nestor broke in. "The Dornishman charged 3 times, and broke 3 lances. I have never seen such a fine performance in the lists. If he'd had 100 Dornishmen like that at the Trident, the Mad King would sit the throne still." Soon Sweetrobin needed the privy, so Lord Nestor escorted him back to the castle, leaving Miranda alone in the box. She moved over to Peter's empty seat beside Alayne. "Remind me again, Alayne," Randa asked. "How many years have you?" 4 and 10, Alayne replied. "You do have a youthful look," Miranda said. "Perhaps it was from being ripped from your mother's womb so early. Lord Baelish had charge of the Gultown port scarce more than 14 years ago, according to my father's records. Your mother could have carried you but 3 moons. It was a mistake to make myself older. He visited beforehand. It was love that drove him to seek the post, that he might return." "Yes, and it was Lady Lysa's love that got it for him, from what I hear. My father had many admirers." "Aye," said Miranda, "as did Our Lady." Her brown eyes narrowed. "Marillion's crime was a heinous one. It fell to the Royces, keepers of the Gates of the Moon, to clean up the mess he made, you know." Alayne had not wanted to think of that. "I pray she was buried with the honors due her house." "Oh, we did our best," Miranda assured her vaguely. "With what the scavengers hadn't taken, anyway. Our men gathered up a braid of auburn hair, some sapphires and moonstones, a velvet dress colored cream and pink and red. And the rest. So many pieces, so many things in pairs. 2 arms, so pale and lovely. A couple of legs, knees and feet to match. There were, of course, twin lungs, kidneys, matching eyes of blue, as lovely as yours. And 3 shoes." Alayne blinked. 3? Randa grinned. "Half again 2, 1 shy of 4. I made the count twice, then thrice." "I do not understand," Alayne lied. "As I did not. I knew Lady Lysa well, and I never observed her to have 3 feet. So someone must have been with her at the moon door before she fell. But who?" "Marillion." Alayne's left hand clenched the arm of her chair. "Ah, but the shoe was far too small. Marillion had the voice of a young lady, but not the feet as I remember him." Still as stone. "Perhaps eagles are known to carry things long leagues. Up to the Eyrie and into your chambers?" asked Miranda dryly. "That's where Carrot, my mule boy, found the shoe's mate." She stared at Alayne, unblinking. "Sansa Stark enough. You are the very image of the aunt you murdered, however dark you dye your hair, and you named Lord Eddard's bastard for me on the mountain." "John," the raven had shrieked, "beware. I should have fled while I could. The wall was safe, far away at the ends of the earth, so close to home. What do you want?" "Harry, of course," said Miranda, "and the prize Littlefinger stole from my father when he took Lady Lysa to wife. The veil itself. Your clever plan to keep Harry here will work. As it happens, you have me to thank for much of it. Sir Lynn's saddle? My doing. Corbray was Bronzion's man, bought and paid for. He would have knocked Harry flat, whatever he'd told you. Now Harry will face that green sisterman instead, the boy with your ribbon. But Harry is... Alayne wanted to say what he truly was. My betrothed. He will not be for much longer. Lady Anya knew what this tourney was, as I did. Her own son Donald provided that mystery night, but I helped him defeat Sir Lothar. Thanks to me, Anya's grandson Roland was spared your Brotherhood of Winged Wards. In her gratitude, she has agreed to arrange my betrothal to Harry once you are gone. Gone? Alayne could barely speak. Randa, we are friends. We are, said Miranda. I am showing you mercy, Lady Stark. More than you showed Lady Lysa. You and your lover Peter will leave on the morrow for Gulltown. From there you can sail to Bravos or wherever you choose, so long as it is across the narrow sea. Live with the Dothraki if you like. As Miranda stood to retake her seat, Sansa rose too, hoping to frame some reply, some offer, some plea. When the words did not come, she dropped back into her chair like a sack of gold, trying to think despite the drumming of horses' hooves on hard-packed soil. My face must not betray me. She had to speak with Lord Littlefinger, with her father. It was the only way. After what seemed an eternity, Peter arrived in the Lord's box, a grim look upon his face. With him came Lord Nestor and Sweetrobin. You missed much of this morning, Peter said, sitting beside Alayne. I imagine you heard the news about Michael and Roland. It matters not. Nor does Hasty and that ruin in the Riverlands. What matters is the Vale army, and Harry was always the key to that. We'll work out our next move once he defeats this Sunderland boy. Father, Alayne began. Her throat was dry. She wanted to tell him what Harry had done, of what Miranda had said, of what she had heard from within the wardrobe. But no words came. He will blame me, Alayne thought, for all of this. She had said too much to Randa, had spoken the wrong words to Harry. Even the favor was my doing. When the final tilt was called, Sir Harold Harding and Sir Damon Sunderland rode up on their mounts for their salute to Lord Robert. This time Harry's lance did not move. Cheers and whoops hailed, "The young falcon!" as the knights trotted to position. The trumpet sounded, and the two green boys put spur to horse. As Black Horse raced towards White, Damon's lance slipped from his grasp and dropped to the ground. Then Harry's shattered on the side of the sisterman's helm. "Oh!" moaned the crowd, but Damon was still a horse when he reached the south end of the lists. He removed his helm and called for a fresh lance from his squire. The Sunderland boy looked to Alayne, donned his helm once more, and began his charge. This time both lances broke. Alayne clapped loudly, ignoring an odd look from her father. Beyond him, she saw Sweetrobin leaning forward in anticipation, repeating a word under his breath. Fly, fly, fly. His eyes fixed themselves on Harry, unblinking, as if he were in a trance. The knights made their third charge, lances coached. This time Harry's horse seemed to stumble. Crack! Harry's lance missed Damon completely, while Damon's exploded into a cloud of splinters, raining wood upon the lists. The horses halted once again at the ends of the field. Now they are tied, Alayne thought. One more charge and... Harry teetered a little in his saddle, paused, then fell hard to the dirt. His horse whickered nervously and turned to circle around him. On its caparison, some white diamonds had turned to red. When she stood for a better view of the fallen knight, Alayne could see blood oozing from between cuisse and codpiece. From the thigh some wooden shard had found. Maesters Coleman and Wilman were dashing onto the field, strong Sam Stone behind them. Alayne only stared at the scene dully. After a few minutes, she turned to her right. Father! Father! What will we do? Peter Baelish's grey-green eyes did not look her way. They did not seem to be looking at anything. Peter! Alayne yelled. He did not answer. Littlefinger! Eyes as cold as ice met hers at last. Then he stood and left without a word. Alayne sank into her seat. She felt numb. Widowhood will become you, Lord Baelish had told her, though she and Harry had never wed. She had no tears, Not this time. Not for Harold, nor for Winterfell. Had she wanted this? Hours passed. Lords Grafton and Belmore paid their respects. A few of the other knights offered her condolences. "Your betrothed died bravely, my lady," remarked Edmund Breakstone, "like his ancestor Humphrey at Ashford." Ben Coldwater buried his face in his hand. "That was Humphrey Beesbury, you dolt." At some point, Donal Wainwood's squire brought her a blanket. The boy's overcoat was quartered with the broken wheel of Wainwood and twin towers. "Thank you," she said, thinking of Sir Donal's words to the table of knights. "What is your name?" "Sandor." The name felt funny to Alayne. "Like the... song?" The boy smiled. "Yes, my lady." "Can you sing it for me?" She remembered how Marillion would sing of Sandor of the Mist. "My voice is of a frog, my lady." "I am certain it will suit." The boy looked about shyly to see that no one else was listening. Then he nodded. "A boy wanders the mist of morn, for refuge he does roam. O'er lonely hills poor Sandor climbs, mayhaps for a new home." There would be no melee. Lord Nestor said it would be unseemly. In its stead would be a simple ceremony to name Lord Robert's champions to the Brotherhood of Winged Knights. They had planned to do this on the morrow, to erect a platform, to weld wings to each knight's helm, to set a lavish feast with wine and music and splendor. None of that would happen now, no more than anything else they'd planned. Most of their guests were leaving the next morning. Best be home before the snows came, they said. And so, in a grassy field beside the Gates of the Moon, a circle of gloomy spectators gathered around Lord Robert and his chosen few. 7, Alayne thought. The gods have had their way after all. Sweetrobin had denied Sir Damon the honor, at Peter's insistence. The resulting holy sum would appease Septon Vane's piety, even if the presence of a stranger among the 7 gave him pause. Mixed into the crowd were the competitors who'd fallen, donning silver cloaks fixed with lapis wings. Sir Ben and Sir Andrew whispered between them, quibbling over who had shown the finest jousting form. Sir Shadrick said a few words in the ear of Sir Morgarth, who glanced furtively at Alayne. Sir Lynn brooded in silence, Lady Forlorn at his hip. Even Ossifer Lips had hobbled from his pavilion, standing with the help of a crutch and Sir Owen. Littlefinger too had emerged at last, though he had not chosen to take part in the ceremony. He stood beside Lord Grafton, stone-faced. As the sun set behind the mountains, the crowd hushed for the naming of Lord Robert's knights. "Sir Gareth Sunderland, son of Tristan Sunderland," Lord Nestor spoke. "Do you swear to shield Lord Robert of House Arryn, keep his counsel, and if need be, give your life for his, in the name of the father, the mother, the warrior, the smith, the crone, and the maiden?" The knight knelt. "I swear." The rest were named in turn. Sir Gareth, Alayne saw. Sir Lymond, Sir Alistair, Sir Targon, Sir Aubrey, Sir Eustace. Only adequate knights, from what she had seen, and not a valuable ward amongst them. Finally, it was the Mystery Knight's turn. Excitement washed through the murmuring crowd as the time came to learn the Orphan of Godsgrace's true identity. He approached Lord Robert, knelt, and removed his helm. The Lord of the Erie's face shone brighter than Alayne had ever seen. The boy squealed and ran to the knight, burying his face in his shoulder. Muffled as it was, the laughter still rang through the field. He laughed and laughed, drawing smiles and chuckles from all around. Sweetrobin was breathless, holding on to the old man hard. In time, though, the laughter shifted. The boy wheezed between yelps once, then again. What followed were tears. Robert sobbed, quietly at first, like a pattering of rain. Soon, the squall was upon them. As the boy wept, his body shuddered and shook. "I miss her, uncle," the boy wailed. "I miss her." The crowd stood silent in the cold dusk, around the howling of their little lord. The cries of the orphan. The gray-haired knight was still a while, not seeming to know what he should do. Then he raised a hand to the boy's head and stroked his hair. When the boy's tears began to subside, the old knight stood. I have returned from Riverrun, where my nephew opened his gates to Emyn Frey, rather than see his son launched over them. As I see it, when Edmure renounced his seat, it rightfully passed to his nephew, Robert. I beseech the honorable knights here to do their duty and claim the castle in the name of their lord. No one spoke. Sweetrobin turned from his great uncle to reveal swollen eyes and a red face, wet with tears and snot. It was Donal Wainwood who stepped forward to break the silence. Sir Brynden, don't you mean we should claim the castle for our king? Sir Donal unsheathed his sword and placed it at Sweetrobin's feet, kneeling. King Robert, of Mountain and Vale. Alayne spied Maester Williman whispering in Gilwood Hunter's ear. The lord nodded, then stepped forward and said, The treachery at Harrenhal must be dealt with as well. It falls to us to bring justice to the Riverlands. He took a place beside Sir Donal and bent the knee. King of Mountain and Vale. King of the Trident, Hector Harding added, placing his sword next to Donal's, his knee on the earth. King of Mountain, Vale, and Rivers. Their swords were joined by a blade of Valyrian steel, as Lyn Corbray knelt beside Sir Hector. Sir Eustace Hunter was next, followed by Sir Gregor Egan and Sir Luke Grafton. The three Sunderland brothers joined them, then the rest of the winged brothers. King of Mountain, Vale, and Rivers, they proclaimed, their swords a heap. The Blackfish met the young lord's gaze, nodded, knelt. The baffled boy sniffled and turned to see the remaining Wainwoods kneel, then Harlan Hunter, Samwell Stone, Lords Grafton and Belmore. When Alayne looked at Littlefinger, a strange smile had erupted across his face. He too bent the knee. Soon all, lords and ladies, knights and squires, servants and commoners alike, were kneeling before Robert Arryn, their little king.